And that's a really tough act to follow, because I'm now going to be the boring one who's going to, first of all, set expectations by telling you my presentation has no animated GIFs. So I'm just going to set that bar right now. I've just got boring pictures, sorry. And then I'm going to be the one who's going to be talking about computer science education, right? Because I used to be a teacher, boo hiss. I'm one of those awful teachers. So stick with me, I promise. I will try and blow your mind in some way. My name is Carrie. I work full-time for the Raspberry Pi Foundation. I was a teacher. I no longer am. I lead the education mission for the foundation. And so that's me. Usually the best way to get hold of me is via Twitter, so please just use my Twitter handle if you want to get to me. So I believe this very, very strongly. Computer science is for everyone. For everyone. Whether they are a boy or a girl, whether they are from a different ethnic background, whether they're from a poor socioeconomic background, doesn't really matter. Computer science is a very important part of whoever that person is going to be, right? You know, there's lots of studies that show that in the next 20 years, every single job type will involve some form of computational thinking. And so I think that computer science can move people socially, economically. I think people can have valuable careers and lives in computer science. And so my starting point for anything I do is this, that computer science is for everyone. So this is me, this is proof that I was once teaching. I always use this photo, it's the only photograph I have of me teaching, and you can tell I'm teaching because I'm pointing at something and the children are lovingly looking up at me whilst I impart lots of wisdom to them, right? That's totally what's happening in that picture. But I was one of the first teachers to kind of identify something that was happening in my classroom and to think about ways in which I could change what was happening. So I taught ICT, which kind of has bad connotations that comes with that word, ICT, Information Communications Technology. So I used to teach children how to consume technology, how to consume in particular Microsoft products to be able to write a letter or present using PowerPoint. And I could tell pretty much straight away that this is not what children were interested in doing because they already knew how to consume technology. What they were interested and excited by and slightly nervous of was how to make their own technology. When you say to a child, okay, what do you want to do? What do you want to make, right? Their imaginations are crazy and they'll come up with some amazing ideas and you go, okay, let's go make that. And at that point they stop. And what we need to do as a society is make sure we equip children with the skills so they're actually able to make those things become a reality. So I also noticed, like a lot of people, that most of my students at Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5, so GCSE and A-level, were boys. In fact, my first A-level class, my first group I ever had, I had 10% representation by women, right? So most of my class were male. After the 4 years I was at the school and I worked very hard at changing that, by the time I left I had 45% representation by women in A-level. So only within 4 years that happened. And just through the approach that I took and why I identified. So here you can see this is something I would always do with my kind of year 7, 8-year-olds, so like 11, 12, 13. I would get them to kind of think about what does a computer scientist look like, you know, what does that word kind of mean. I'd get them to, you know, draw pictures quite often, or I'd get them to fill out post-it notes. And here's some of their answers, which I think are really interesting, right? Because this is the kind of thought process that's going on in the mind of 13-year-old girls in particular. So some of the post-it notes say things like alone. So computer scientist sits alone. They're really good, they're very smart, so that's kind of cool. They use computers, they earn lots of money. Okay, so there's some good answers up here. But then there's things like maths, sit a lot, you have to be like Einstein. My favorite is 57 cats. It's very specific. Not sure why 57, but apparently people who are into computer science like cats. And so really I had to think about, well, how can I help change this mindset? And at the time there was lots of research, there's lots and lots of work where people run girls-only coding clubs, right? At the time the answer was you segregate the girls and so that they can take part in computer science activities just for them. Because if you put them with boys, it's just not going to work. I can't tell you how anti this statement I am, and I proved it within my own teaching practice. That's not the case. Because what you are doing, without realizing you're doing it, is you're saying to the girls, you cannot access computer science unless you're in a room with other girls away from boys. Boys can access it, they're fine, but you need a special room with a special syllabus that's just for you to be able to access this. And it could be a short-term solution. You might see that girls pick up the subject more quickly, but actually it's not helping the overall cultural problem that we already have. So you've got to think of the end game here, and actually inclusion is better than exclusion. Something else I noticed as well was that I was the only female computer science teacher on staff. So I was in a department of 6 people, and I was the only woman. And I would walk past some of the classrooms, I'd overhear the teachers talking, or, presenting to their class, and quite often I would kind of stop and kind of have to walk backwards, because I just heard a male teacher say something very masculine, and without realizing they're saying it, kind of excluding half of his class without realizing it. And so I had to think about, well, how am I going to help the teachers that I work with? And in all fairness, and I think this is a really important point, quite a lot of this is subconscious, right? We don't realize we're doing it. Even myself, who's a huge advocate for women in tech, will find myself prefixing, using pronouns that are masculine rather than feminine when I'm talking about astronauts or something like that. I just don't realize I'm doing it, right, because it's so subconscious. And so here's some statistics that came from the US, actually, that generally, teachers give boys more opportunity to figure out a solution to a problem than girls. This has been seen by, I think it's Harvard who did this study, that this is happening in classrooms. Teachers are more likely to take questions from boys than they are from girls. Teachers rate girls' ability in STEM subjects lower than boys, right? You often overhear, I was just talking to Catherine earlier, she was talking about a secondary school, her daughter had finished something in binary first, and the teacher said, oh, that's surprising, because normally girls aren't very good at this, right? So it's just kind of, how can we stop this kind of thing happening? So I would work with a lot of teachers, not just in my school, but outside of my school, and how we could change this. So this is one of the initiatives that I helped to start, and I now chair, which is called CAS Include. So Computing at School is a grassroots organisation, a very volunteer-based organisation, and a subset of that is a group of us called #Include. So we're all teachers or ex-teachers. We do all this in our spare time. Basically, we run events for other teachers to help train them on how to be more inclusive. We write free resources. We do workshops for children as well to try and show them what's available. And here's an example of one of our free resources. This is a poster that you can download. We have copies as well that we'll send out to schools. And what's really important to notice here, again, is that it's not just about women and gender. It's also about children from poor socioeconomic backgrounds. There is a kind of, in the Western world, we just assume that every child has access to the internet or to a computer, and they don't. I worked in the 4th poorest borough in the UK, and the children I would work with, quite often at home they'd only have one family computer, and quite often they weren't allowed to use the internet on it. Or if they could use that computer, they couldn't really do any programming in case they broke something and lost all the family's files, which is one of the reasons why I took Raspberry Pi into my classroom. Is there anything else to say about that? No, I don't think so. And so the other thing I did was I noticed that the kids in my class were starting to use YouTube to search for answers to things rather than Google to search for things. And they really liked watching videos. So I thought, well, actually, one really easy thing I can do to make what I'm trying to teach open for everyone to be able to access is to put it on YouTube. So I started a YouTube channel. The idea was to demonstrate that there are women in the world doing stuff that anyone can watch and get involved with, but it's accessible by anyone, whatever their background. So I make videos, really geeky videos, so I do lots of tutorials, I interview women in technology, and then there's this record of them on YouTube. This year I was invited to YouTube to meet them because Google are really working on diversity at the moment, and they've noticed that 22% of YouTube content creators are female. That's global. Think of all the people who upload videos to YouTube, only 22% of those are women. And that's something that needs to change. And I've been working with them around the problems involved with YouTube, like things like negative comments and what it's like to be a woman on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. But they're really trying to promote people creating more content for YouTube. And everyone I meet who I talk to about, like people want to make coding videos or they want to put their teaching online, I always say, make YouTube videos. It's the easiest way you can reach a large number of people. You can make those videos Creative Commons, you can make them open, and then other people can use them and reuse them. So here's my YouTube channel. This is kind of what it looks like, if you want to kind of head over and have a look. And then the other thing that I did was I was approached by a publisher to write a book. So I wrote, at the time, Raspberry Pi was really new, and I was one of the first teachers to use it in my classroom, so I wrote a book. But it's not just about Raspberry Pi, it has all kind of programming in there from scratch to Python to anything else, just to try and demonstrate that computing can be interesting and engaging to everyone, right? It doesn't have to be, okay, so Python 101, here's adding integers, and this is what a function is, right? It doesn't have to be like that. It can be, oh, you want to make a hamster disco party setup. Okay, let's do that, and actually have some kind of fun context in which to deliver this that will engage more people. So at that point, the Raspberry Pi Foundation got in touch, and they said, we like what you're doing. I worked with a University of Cambridge doctor called Dr. Sam Aaron, who came to my classroom, and together we created something called Sonic Pi. And sorry, Tash, that's Ruby. Just going to throw that out there. So we teach children computer science concepts through the medium of music. So children live code music. They get a lot of enjoyment out of live coding the music part of it, and actually, without realizing it, they're learning computer science. In fact, we were teaching threads, which is a university undergraduate kind of topic, to 10-year-olds, and they understand threads because it's about the medium in which you teach this, the context in which you teach it, and not what you're teaching. So Raspberry Pi, people might have heard of Raspberry Pi. You might have heard of the device, Raspberry Pi. This is where we have a bit of a problem. So the Raspberry Pi Foundation is a charity, and our mission is to try and get kids, making, building, inventing, learning computer science, electronics, and everything else. And one of the ways in which we do this is we produce a low-cost computer, confusingly called Raspberry Pi. So everyone thinks we're a technology company like Apple, who sell a product, and that's all we're about. We're not. We sell Raspberry Pis. If you buy one, the money goes to the charity, and we're able to spend that money on children and other projects. So if you ever buy a Raspberry Pi, thank you for your donation. So what we're trying to do is just equip children for a future that will involve technology, but also we're doing it in a way where we can include everyone. So the device is low cost. So if I go back to children at home not having access to a computer, we can put a computer into the hands of every child because they only cost £30. That's pretty good. This year you may have seen we launched a new version of the Raspberry Pi called the Pi Zero. So this is my Pi Zero, which is a computer that I can put in my pocket, which only costs £5. Right? Not bad. So we're already breaking down that barrier of giving access to the technology. All Raspberry Pis run Linux, which is an open source operating system. And the distribution we use is a form of Debian called Raspbian, which is contributed by people around the world. The software that we have on there is free and open source as well, because we believe in free and open education. You may have heard recently as well, we have merged with Code Club. So Code Club are the organisation in the UK who run after-school clubs and initiatives. And what it means for us as an organisation is we're able to fund what they're doing and the great work that they're doing, but we're also able to branch out. So we're not just putting equipment into the hands of children and technology into the hands, but we're also providing support now with learning resources, with club material, with access in a different form, so not just through formal education, but also through informal education. We write free and open resources, so they're not just free as in they're online and you can look at them and you don't have to pay for them. They're also free in terms of the license that we use, in that they're Creative Commons share alike, which is the same license as Wikipedia, so anyone can take them, remix them, make them their own, because what we want to do is just make sure that everyone around the world has access to things that are free, that they're able to use and learn with. Another thing we do is we try and inspire children through projects. So one of our most famous projects at the moment is called AstroPi, and if you're not aware of British ESA astronaut Tim Peake, I'm not sure where you've been for the last couple of months, but Tim Peake is on board the International Space Station. He's our first British ESA astronaut. He's not the first Brit in space, but he is the first British ESA astronaut, and he's the first British astronaut on board the International Space Station. When he went up there, he took 2 Raspberry Pis with him, and that's actually what you can see on here on his Twitter feed. We call them Astro Pis because they're inside these fancy flight cases, and they have an add-on board called a Sense Hat on top. And those Pis are running programs and running code written by children in the UK. They all took part in a competition, and their programs, their experiments, are all being run by him across the 6-month mission that he's up there. And we've also just opened up a new competition with Sonic Pi to make music for Tim to listen to on his PiPod. I'm not sure we can use that for legal reasons, but I'm going with it, PiPod. And so children right now have access to be able to take part in this and have their code run in space. And Tim is so excited about this that if the code doesn't work and it gets stuck on a certain line, he's going to phone the children and say, oh, hey, can you help me debug my code? I'm stuck on line 16, you know, and what a fantastic opportunity. And those Pis are staying up there. So we're actually talking to France at the moment, like we have UK Space, France have a similar version, so we're talking about how we can roll this out across France. We're talking to NASA about how we can do something with NASA astronauts, because those Pis are going to stay up there. And the same equipment that's on board the International Space Station is what you can buy for under £50. So it's not too bad. Right, so I'm going to set you some homework very quickly, because I'm a teacher and that's what I do. So if you can all get your planners out and go to the correct date. Number 1, if you want to go away and do something positive to help children in computer science, number 1, volunteer. Volunteer for a code club, a coder dojo, for Festival of Code, for a Raspberry Jam, whatever it is, just go along and you could change the life of a child without realizing it. Events like this, keep doing them, because this is how we can help people generally upskill and have a better life. Number 2, so something I haven't talked about because there's just not enough time to talk about everything. I'm very passionate about open source education, as I said, and one thing I'm doing at the moment with the Python Software Foundation is I'm trying to create a better Python IDE for children to get started with, because anyone who's used IDLE will know IDLE is terrible. And so if you want to get involved in that or help us roll out Python to children everywhere in a much better way, please join this mailing list. It's a working group called the Python in Education Working Group, and that's what we're trying to achieve. Another thing, encourage diversity. Don't exclude any children. If you run, a girls-only club, really consider, are you excluding boys from that club for any particular reason? You can still have an after-school club that's targeted towards girls. You don't need to exclude boys for that to be a success. Celebrate women in tech. And so this is a very quick plug for me. I've been named as a finalist in the Red Hat Women in Open Source Awards. Even if you don't vote for me, I think everyone should go to that website and vote for one of the amazing women that's up there. There's a category for community, there's a category for academic. So for girl graduates right now, or who are undergrads, they're listed on there as well. I think what a wonderful thing for them to have that on their CV that they've won. So even if you don't vote for me, please go to that website and vote for someone, because I think that's really important. And then what I'm going to leave you with is this, and it's a video. And it shows you some girls doing some stuff with code. And think about, what will the next generation look like? If we equip them with these skills to be makers of technology, what kind of impact are they going to have on the world when they go into medicine, or they go into government, or they go into the military, or anywhere else? If they are able to use open source tools and they can break down problems into smaller parts and make a better world, what will that world look like? Pretty amazing, I think. Oh yeah, your homework's due on the 6th of March. Let's go. show me what you've been doing?
It's code for making these LED lights light up on my Raspberry Pi. Ooh. We've been Python programming to make an image on our Raspberry Pi.
Awesome. I mean, this doesn't come out very well. Yeah. Do you want to tell me how you did it?
Well, basically, we've got a colour.
Like we copied the numbers for the colour.
It's really simple, and then just draw a design, and then the colours.
Put the colours in the order that you want it to create, like the shape that you want.
And then we just type it in.
Yeah, and then it comes out like this. So this is like a person that's like have their arms up. And then the next picture that we're going to do is when the arms just like straight apart like a T shape.
So we were using Carrie fabulous worksheet to make an accelerometer and shake it, and it's on the Geek Girl Diaries channel. It's a new video, so go check that out. But
I did pay her.
I've taught Philbin the time module, which is like time breaks, pauses in the program. So his SenseHat thing is now changing between two configurations of the LEDs.
Basically says Astro.
Okay, so a second ago you were both cheering. Why were you cheering?
We managed to make it work, so it changed colour due to the
Shaking.
You just shake it.
Yeah, you
shake it and it reacts.
Hello.
Hi, what are you doing?
We're using the Astro Pi, and on the screen we've got the Raspberry Pi is controlling this spaceship. I made that.
You made this.
I made this thing.
You made this. And what is that?
Lights.
You've been coding. And what have you been using to code?
A Raspberry Pi.
Okay, and what programming language have you been using?
Scratch.
Scratch. And did you like it?
Yeah.
What do you think's fun about it?
The lights.
The lights. And what kind of noise did you make when it worked?
Loud.
Did you go, yes?
Yeah.
Hello, so here we are at MozFest, and this is
Yasmin,
Hi, Yasmin is a fan of Geek Girl Diaries.
I am.
And tell us what you are doing at the moment in preparation for something really special at the end of the year.
On the 5th of December, I am at Pywells, so I am building a really cool spot big robot.
So, let me just say, I came from the generation where IT lessons were not that great. Yeah, and yeah, it was the case in my school where actually you didn't really go on to do ICT at A-level, or we didn't have computer science as a subject then. And establishing that difference wasn't easy for people to see, and I think it's still something we challenge with now. And so in school in computer science, we find it hard because often I'll say to my friends, oh yeah, I do computer science, and they'll go, oh, my laptop's got this buzzing, can you like fix it? And I'm like, oh, or, oh, my email account, and I'm like, oh, no, I don't do IT, I do computer science. And there are similarities, but there's huge differences, and hackathons and everything else that we do like really promote those ideas of what it is to be computer scientists, what it is to be creating something new or having ideas and thinking about doing things and generating them by learning code yourself. I think it's a really important message, and I'm so happy that it's going on. I think the talk was amazing. Do we have
I
any?
think you should keep doing what you're doing as well, right? Like all you guys.
Well,
like, think
I
you
owe
know
it
how good
really
is.
to Paula up here. She's going to hide now. Second row, blonde, ducking. She started this last year, so we're going to continue this year on year, and we hope that you guys are enjoying it so far and that it keeps growing and growing and growing, because that's the aim for this. It's all about sharing, like you say, not excluding anyone, and just getting everybody excited about technology and computer science and things you can do. But did anybody else have any questions for Carrie that we could fire away? Is anybody feeling more question-y mood now? We have a roaming microphone, so you can even hear yourself in the acoustics. We have one. We have a roaming one. We're really prepared for this, right?
It's all right, it can be loud if need be, because I'm in the middle.
Ah!
I was wondering, what's the biggest challenge you face as a YouTuber trying to promote these ideas?
Oh my gosh, that's a really hard one. So I think from a personal point of view, I think some of the negative comments that I get on my YouTube channel, I find that sometimes a little bit hard to deal with when someone like questions how you look, or what you're wearing in that particular video. Or I think my favorite one was when there are children in the audience, but there are some swear words that was you ain't a effing geek, you ain't an effing girl, and you ain't got any effing diaries, which I found really amusing. But that's the kind of thing that someone takes the time to sit and write to me. Not really anything about what's in the video itself or what we're trying to achieve. So I find that on a personal level quite difficult. In terms of like producing content, I find that just really hard because there's just not enough hours in the day to make videos. I would make more if I had more time. So I find that hard. So that's why I encourage as many people to make the videos as possible, because then I'm not doing it and it's not all on me to help educate other people. So don't be afraid of YouTube. It's not as scary as that. It's actually like some of the nice videos I get like kids filming what they've done. They send them to me, having watched a video that I've made. So there's some really nice moments too.
Kind of in follow-up to that, sorry. How do you deal with such terrible criticism that has no use?
Well, so I filter all the comments first of all, right? So only I see some of the really bad ones. Usually I share them with my colleagues or my fiance, and I say, oh, someone said this. If it's really got to me, I've started to meet other women YouTubers, and so I'm kind of like conversing with them and saying, well, I've had this comment, how did you deal with it? And they'll say, well, this is what I did. But generally, you just have to be a bit, you just kind of have to grow a thicker skin almost. Like, as Tash said earlier, the road is not easy. It's not an easy road, but there is so much positivity that those small things that don't happen that often, but they do happen, you can kind of get over.
I think it's a really important point. Like,
I think there's a question.
Oh, another question?
There's a question over there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one of the first things was training the other teachers within the department about how they were presenting the subject and what kind of examples they were using, what language they were using, how they were taking questions from girls and boys and so on. One thing we did was to try and teach using a project-based learning approach rather than, okay, Python 101, this is a variable, this is selection and repetition and so on. We created projects instead, and collaborative projects, and that's really important. And altruistic. Girls generally are quite altruistic, so if there was a project where they had to, help something like a recycling project, or how can we help the local community, we found a much greater uptake by those particular girls. And the other thing that I did was try to improve visibility. So the few girls I had at A-level, I would ask them to come to my Year 7, 8, 9 lessons, to my GCSE lessons, and same with GCSE girls further down. Just so they could see that person in the classroom as well, and see that actually it's completely normal for the helpers in the classroom to be female as well as male. That's just some of the ways.
Do we have any other questions down here? Sorry, Harry. Can you just wait for the microphone? Purely, we're recording the audio. As you've noticed, we've got cameras and stuff. We're trying to provide these talks online to make it open access for everybody as well. The importance of sharing. So the microphone's just there for our audio feed. Sorry. There we go. Thank you for being patient.
It's really cool that you're working with schools quite a lot. Have you ever thought about or tried working with the libraries at all? Because it's another good area.
Yes, so we are working with libraries. We worked with Birmingham Library most recently. We're working with Manchester Library at the moment. And Ben Nuttall, who's on our staff, he is kind of tasked with outreach through the library networks. We've also been to Exeter Library and worked with them because libraries are becoming like the new, like there's a Fab Lab inside Exeter Library, which is amazing. They're kind of becoming the new communal space for hacking and learning this kind of stuff. And obviously with Code Club, we're putting clubs into libraries as well. Catherine is nodding, yeah, because we're always looking for people to volunteer for code clubs. So yes, libraries are an important place for this kind of stuff to happen as well as schools. It's a good point.
Any other questions? Yep. Oh no, one more.
Hello. Just to follow up to that last one, have you worked with the National Space Centre at all on the Astro Academy stuff?
Yep, so that's at Leicester, right? Am I right? Yep, so Dave, who runs our AstroPi project, they're one of the partners in the project. So yes, we're working with them, the National STEM Centre, and a few others in that field.
Because we've had like, since Tin Peak's been at the space station, we've had like 3,000 people a day.
I'm not surprised.
So it's amazing.
We just got a cardboard cutout of Tim in our office. It's like the best thing I've ever.
Yeah, we've
it's
got
like everyone
several,
wants their photograph with that and not with anything else. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Carrie. I think we'd all like to join in another round of applause because that was an amazing talk.